Escaping from Eden, Chapter 13. Please, sir, I want some more. Some light bulb moments are more dramatic than others. In 1980, Orlando Sorrell was hit on the side of the head with a baseball. He was knocked out by the blow, but being an eager sportsman of 10 years old, he didn't let his brief blackout prevent him from finishing the game once he had come around. Orlando suffered headaches for a year after the incident. When the symptoms receded, Orlando realized that something had changed. Today, if you put any date to him, any date and any year, Orlando can tell you the day of the week you're referring to. And he does this without fail. Ask him how many times the 15th April has fallen on a Wednesday, and he will just know. Pluck out 2 random dates from different years, and he will instantly tell you how many days elapsed between the 2 dates. Ask him what happened on February 11, 1983, and he will tell you. It was a Friday. It rained, and I got a pepperoni sausage pizza from Domino's. This incredible capability was switched on by a blow to his head in 1980, and has remained on ever since. Orlando exhibits what neurological scientists call acquired Savant syndrome. The pattern of acquired Savant syndrome is that a person who previously had exhibited no extraordinary mental or creative skill suddenly finds a higher capacity has been released by a central nervous system or CNS injury. Ben McMahon grew up down the road from me in Victoria. At some point during his education, he did a couple of years' study of Mandarin, but it didn't take. He was never able to speak it convincingly or fluently. That is until 2012 when he nearly died in a car crash. Ben suffered a head injury and was in a coma for a week. When Ben finally opened his eyes, he beckoned the nurse and said, "Excuse me, nurse, I feel really sore." He said it in fluent Mandarin. Confused by the sounds that had come out of his mouth, he indicated that he wanted a pen and paper. He wrote down, "I love my mom. I love my dad. I will recover." The note was written in Mandarin. Thankfully, Ben's ability to speak in his native English returned after 3 days, but his Mandarin skills have persisted and have remained ever since. And it wasn't the half-learned schoolboy Mandarin that he had before. Ben was fluent. In fact, he was so fluent that he soon moved to Shanghai, where for a time he hosted a TV game show and then went on to study at a Chinese university. Between 1996 and 2000, Dr. Bruce Miller, professor of neurology at the University of California, cataloged 12 cases of acquired Savant syndrome. Strangely, these were cases where musical and artistic skills were released or dramatically enhanced by the onset of frontal-temporal dementia. His research team hypothesized that selective degeneration of a particular part of the brain had resulted in decreased inhibition of visual systems. Now that's an interesting phrase. In 2005, a research team led by Professor Dr. Mark Lithogyi of University College London demonstrated that degeneration in a particular area of the brain may release untapped cognitive abilities. In an amazing bit of research in 2006, a team led by Dr. Drago set up an experiment to judge the elevated artistic skills of an artist whose painting style had undergone a metamorphosis during the onset of frontal-temporal degeneration. Without telling them anything about the artist or her story, the researchers invited a number of art judges to assess the changes in the artist's work. The judges were shown 18 pictures from before the artist had shown any symptoms of degeneration, 6 paintings from the time that her symptoms were just emerging, and 16 paintings from the time that she was fully symptomatic. Without knowing the dates of the paintings or anything about the artist's diagnosis, the art judges critiqued each painting. Their findings gave the same report. As the degeneration progressed, her skill level was lifting in a way that reflected an enhanced artistic technique. The growth in skills was described by the research team as evidencing a disinhibition of part of the brain. There's that language again. Apparently, entirely by accident, an inhibitor was being switched off. Hearing that, we have to ask, What in the world is an inhibitor doing in our brains? Mind-bending though it is, Genesis, the Mesopotamian tablets, and Popol Vuh all propose the same answer. It was put there. Writing in 2018, Dr. Daryl Trefford of Marion University, a research director in psychiatry, asked the obvious question: is it possible that such dormant potential resides in all of us? The challenge, of course, if that is so, is how to tap those hidden abilities without having endured some CNS catastrophe. Once you have seen and heard a few cases of acquired Savant syndrome, you cannot just go back to business as usual. A light has been switched on. Contemporary neurological science and the voices of our ancient mythologies compel us to ask how we can disinhibit our human capacities. If we see this potential getting unlocked by accident through a CNS injury, then we surely have to explore how such potential may be tapped deliberately and move our default settings a little higher. In the Gospels and New Testament, Jesus reveals a God who loves human beings as we are, but does not wish us to remain as we are. All Jesus' teachings are about elevating the human condition. His teachings continually invite us to be far more than we have yet imagined ourselves to be. The New Testament letter of 2 Peter calls on its hearers to learn how to, quote, participate in the divine nature and escape the corruption in the world, end quote. The exhortation that follows is to goodness, understanding, self-control, perseverance, devotion, kindness, and love. 2 Peter 1. These are given as means by which we can elevate ourselves to a higher way of being. In a similar vein, the Apostle Paul's writings teach us to transcend our biological wiring and be led by the Spirit of God, resident within us. When we allow the spiritual aspect to drive us, the change in our being will be manifested in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Galatians 5:22. In his most famous teachings, the Sermon on the Mount and the Sermon on the Plain, Jesus teaches ways of being that are not only healthy at a societal level, but which avoid behaviors that have the potential to ruin any life. Jesus referred to that ruination, Gehenna, and it was the refuse tip outside the city of Jerusalem. The destruction behaviors from which Jesus calls us to disengage include writing people off, adultery, being led by lust, infidelity to our spouses, dishonesty, revenge, selfishness, meanness, hatred, and abuse of children. In each instance, Jesus appeals to a higher faculty, one resident in every human being, our ability to foresee consequences. Furthermore, the Gospels show us a Jesus who lived unafraid of the powers of that time. He brings the same freedom and self-esteem to many who were rejected and downtrodden. He sets worshipers of God free from their attachment to priesthoods and elites. He effects healing for the sick and those troubled by evil spirits. He brings the dead to life and gives joy to the mourning. A little more weirdly, Jesus sources money from a fish, generates a huge feed of fish from an empty basket, and a huge catch of fish from empty water. He walks on the same water, teaches his friends to do the same, and arrests a violent storm simply by speaking to it. So when Jesus pauses from all that activity and declares, anyone who believes in me will do the things I have been doing, these things and even greater things, because I am returning to the Father, what are we to make of that? What greater things could there possibly be? This incredible saying invites us to imagine a way of being where all kinds of inhibitors have been switched off. Jesus lived freely and authentically in the face of intimidation, conflict, and hostile powers. How might that look for us? Jesus' miracles overturn all our conventional understandings of what is and is not possible. How might that look for us? If he can bring healing to bodies and minds and elevate those around him, how much more of that might we do? He did all this through an intimate, conscious rapport with his Heavenly Father. What if we were to enjoy the same experience? If Jesus represents what a human life might look like with the slave programming and all the inhibitors switched off, then I want some more of that. And what about our untapped cognitive abilities, to use Dr. Mark Lagothi's phrase? What might a human life look like with our brains on a higher setting? Popol Vuh speaks of an earlier setting whereby we can see beyond what is local and physical. What would life be like with powers of perception switched on at that level? The book of Genesis and the cuneiform tablets speak of a previous setting engineered for fantastically long lifespans. With what confidence, patience, and courage might we live if we were equipped with super robust health and longevity? Before Babel, Genesis portrays a world of mutual understanding and easy communication. How would a 21st century be if it were built on Concord like that? When Jesus said, "These and even greater things will you do," I can't think of a greater invitation than that to explore, and not for the sake of curiosity, but to transform our lives. That is the end of chapter 13. Peace and blessings to you all.